3 years into its rule, the movement has codified its harsh Islamic decrees into law that now includes a ban on women's voices in public. No education beyond the 6th grade. No employment in most workplaces and no access to public spaces like parks, gyms and salons. No long-distance travel if unaccompanied by a male relative. No leaving home if not covered from head to toe. And now, the sound of a woman's voice outside the home has been outlawed in Afghanistan, according to a 114-page manifesto released late last month that codifies all of the Taliban government's decrees restricting women's rights. A large majority of the prohibitions have been in place for much of the Taliban's 3 years in power, slowly squeezing Afghan women out of public life. But for many women across the country, the release of the document feels like a nail in the coffin for their dreams and aspirations. Some had clung to the hope that the authorities might still reverse the most severe limitations, after Taliban officials suggested that high schools and universities would eventually reopen for women after they were shuttered. For many women, that hope is now dashed. We are going back to the first reign of the Taliban, when women did not have the right to leave the house, said Musarat Faramars, 23, a woman in Baghlan province, in northern Afghanistan, referring to the movement's rule from 1996 to 2001. I thought that the Taliban had changed, but we are experiencing the previous dark times again. Since the Taliban regained power in August 2021, the authorities have systematically rolled back the rights that women, particularly those in less conservative urban centers, had won during the 20-year U.S. occupation. Today, Afghanistan is the most restrictive country in the world for women, and the only one that bans high school education for girls, experts say. The publication of the regulations has ignited fears of a coming crackdown by emboldened officers of the so-called Vice and Virtue Police, the government officials who don white robes and are stationed on street corners to ensure that the country's morality laws are observed. The manifesto defines for the first time the enforcement mechanisms that can be used by these officers. While they have frequently issued verbal warnings, those officers are now empowered to damage people's property or detain them for up to 3 days if they repeatedly violate the Vice and Virtue laws. The Taliban have forcefully rejected outside pressure to ease the restrictions on women, even as the policies have isolated Afghanistan from much of the West. Taliban officials defend the laws as rooted in the Islamic teachings that govern the country. Afghanistan is an Islamic nation. Islamic laws are inherently applicable within its society, the spokesman for the government, Zabiul Mujahid, said in a statement. But the regulations have drawn widespread criticism from human rights groups and the United Nations mission in Afghanistan. The mission's head, Rosa Otunbayeva, called them a distressing vision for Afghanistan's future that extends the already intolerable restrictions on women's rights. Even visual cues of womanhood have been slowly scrubbed from the public realm. Over the past 3 years, women's faces have been torn from advertisements on billboards, painted over in murals on school walls and scratched off posters lining city streets. The heads of female mannequins, dressed in all black, all concealing abayas, are covered in tinfoil.